Well, everyone, thank you so much. We are absolutely delighted to welcome you to Vaquita Hacks, the first online international hackathon dedicated to finding urgent solutions to help save the vaquita from extinction. It is incredible to see everyone here today, and the enthusiasm that we've had from all of the participants for this urgent cause has been quite remarkable. So welcome everybody to Vaquita Hacks. Today, as we are gripped by the deadly coronavirus pandemic, an ever-present brutal reminder of mortality, the world is also presented with the dire plight of the vaquita, the world's most smallest porpoise on the brink of extinction. The gravity of losing such a unique species from our planet forever is almost too impossible to carry, and the fight to save the vaquita is a symbolic measure of the enormous biodiversity challenges of our time. We are in an emergency situation where species around the world are collapsing, they're on the brink of extinction, and at the risk of disappearing forever. Extinction is forever. And that's why it's so important that we bring all of you here today to tackle the urgent issue with new minds, new solutions, and new collaborations, to work together now before it's too late. And sadly, whilst we may not save the vaquita, we can use the learnings from today to incorporate them in many other urgent situations around the world, where species are being killed every day by the insidious illegal wildlife trade. So thank you very much for joining us here today. Over the next 2 days, you will be working on a number of challenges ranging from wildlife crime law review, science and geospatial analytics, and public engagement and civic action. Next slide, please, Sanjana. This is the agenda for the 2 days. From 3 o'clock GMT time till 5 today, we have our guest speakers. We're delighted to welcome Andrea Crosta and all of our incredible panelist speakers here today. Then the hacking will start around 5 o'clock GMT time today, and we'll finish around midnight on Sunday tomorrow. And David Luna will be giving closing remarks at the closing ceremony. Next slide, please, Sanjana. So again, it's just a big thank you to all of the amazing sponsors that have supported us through this project, ranging from Microsoft to Esri to Kennedy's law firm, UE and University of Plymouth, and to our amazing panel mentors and judges who will be with us over the 2 days. Next slide, please, Sanjana. Just a little bit on the organisers of Vaquita Hacks. So my name is Harry Wright. I'm the CEO of the Conservation Project International. I'm also a lawyer and a passionate conservationist. The other two co-organisers are Dr. Odine Serrano, who has spent over 26 years in US federal government experience at NASA and with intelligence. She was appointed as the first intelligence lead for wildlife trafficking and is now the owner of Counter Wildlife Trafficking. Odine is heading up the science and analytical track today. And thirdly, Sanjana Paul is the co-founder and executive director of EarthHacks, one of our Vaquita Hacks event partners. She also works in astronomical science software developer at NASA's Langley Research Center and is leading the public engagement and civic action track. And then lastly, David Luna is a co-director of the Conservation Project International and president of Luna Global Networks. And David is one of the international leaders in illicit crime. Next slide, please, Sanjana. So to introduce our guest speaker, Andrea Crosta, I'm going to pass you over to my co-director at the Conservation Project, Jessica Graham. Thank you.
Thanks, Harry, and thanks for the Conservation Project International, all the partners that have pulled together to put together this important event online. I think with less than 10 vaquita left in the wild due to its food source getting poached at unprecedented levels, of the Totoaba and their fish bladders that are being trafficked. We'll hear from Andrea a little bit in his remarks, but at $20,000 a kilo, they're getting sold on the black market, the Totoaba fish bladders, due to the high consumption and demand of the Chinese. Why is this? I think it's a low risk of detection and a high reward potential, and we really need to reverse this equation. I think in times of crisis, we find innovation. And so this event is quite timely and symbolic because we're at a critical juncture. Urgent action is needed. We can either seize this moment and see it as an opportunity to develop solutions, as we have many of our audience members here doing today through technology, but to really take an active role in eradicating the issue. Or we can face a future where these animals, not just the vaquita, but the orangutans and others will be a future that we'll only be knowing by storybooks for our future generations to come. So, I think this event is quite important in the aspect of reflecting on and representing a multi-stakeholder approach, the importance of collaborative partnerships to engage science, academia, law enforcement, youth, technology enthusiasts like those here, and innovative thinkers is really, really important. And so I implore you all to, each of you who are here, to go and inspire others to take action and have an impact. Whether it's raising awareness for this issue or not participating in the plastic use that's polluting the waters where these species roam. So I'm more than pleased to introduce our keynote speaker, Andrea Crosta, the Executive Director and Board Member of Earth League International. He has over 30 years of experience in law enforcement and conservation projects around the world. And in a parallel professional career, he's been working for over 17 years as an international consultant to companies and government agencies on high-end security technologies and services, homeland security, anti-piracy investigations, and risk management. He now applies this unique background and expertise to conservation and wildlife protection. And he's also among the founding members of the Wildlife Justice Commission in the Netherlands, a board member for the Africa Conservancy Foundation, and the creator and project manager for Wild Leaks, which was the first world wildlife crime whistleblower initiative. He's also been featured on the Netflix documentary, The Ivory Game, and the National Geographic documentary, Sea of Shadows, which I hope many of you have an opportunity to watch, as this is quite unique to today's discussion about the international trafficking of Chochoaba and their potential extinction in the Sea of Cortez of the vaquita porpoise. He's also the co-author of the first investigation into ivory trafficking and terrorism in 2010 to 2012, which changed the narrative and seized the interest of governments around the world on the issue of elephant poaching and ivory trafficking. And so with further ado, I will hand this over to Andrea. You will have to take over on the screen there, Andrea, but thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, everyone. Very soon I will share my screen. So thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and especially for the work that you all are about to do. So I'm here also in a way on behalf of the vaquita and the marine life of the Sea of Cortez to thank you all for the work that you're about to do, and I'm actually very, very curious about tomorrow, about the ideas, about what you're gonna do. Of course, I would like to thank you. Just allow me a few seconds to thank Harry Wright of the Conservation Project International, Odin Serrano, of course, of Countering Wildlife Trafficking Institute, is also a member of our team of Earth League International, Sanjara Paul of Earth Hacks, David Luna, who will close the hack tomorrow, and Jessica Graham, and all the moderators of who are guiding this exciting event, and Microsoft for the prizes. So I am sharing the screen, and tell me if you see if you don't see it. So I would like to spend a few minutes to contextualize the problem, because I think it's important for all of you to understand the space where you are now working. So before adding, a few words about my organization, Earth League International, and the work that we do, I think it's important to share with you some information and facts that you should keep in mind during this hackathon. First of all, we are we're operating in. So our operational space is environmental crime. So environmental crime is, as you probably some of you know very well, according to UNEP and Interpol, is the 4th largest criminal enterprise on the planet, estimated up to almost $260 billion a year. Of course, environmental crime includes wildlife trafficking and poaching, but also illegal and unregulated fishing and illegal logging and timber, the trade of ozone depleting substances, and in general, the dumping of hazardous waste. So it's a big thing. As Jessica said before, you make a lot of money from environmental crime, and the risks are very low. If I was a criminal, that would be my space, environmental crime. As we'll see now, is also a fantastic way to make cash very quickly to then reinvest in other crimes. So no wonder various entities around the world, exactly, including United Nations, said that environmental crime can actually affect a nation's economy, security, and even its existence. It's that serious. Before starting, I would like to share with you a story, a real story that happened to us in a, let's say, undisclosed country in South America. I cannot give you the right country, the name of the country, because it's an ongoing operation. It's in an ongoing also investigation. So as you maybe know, but later I will explain you what a big chunk of our work is to launch undercover operations around the world and to engage traffickers very, very close. We infiltrate those networks, and very often we record video and audio conversation using various devices. So this was, we were in South America after, let's say, a year and a half of work in terms of, intelligence gathering and getting to the right person, getting the trust from the right people. We finally get to a meeting in a restaurant. So the first guest that we were supposed to meet was is still, because he's still there, is one of the most important wildlife traffickers in the country. He's a Chinese businessman, so he does a lot of stuff, also legal, but he's also trafficking pretty much everything. And the conversation quite immediately, the focus was wildlife trafficking. Of course, he offers us a lot of stuff. He offers us almost 5 tons of shark fins. He offers us jaguar parts. He offers timber, all kind of seafood, illegal seafood. So we talked for a while about that. Then the second person arrived, and he introduced himself as the representative of one of the most important, if not the most important, organized crime group in the country, a narco trafficker. And the conversation, effortlessly moved to other kind of stuff, especially money laundering. We will see money laundering is a sort of a fil rouge, is a common denominator of all these people. And so our guy, the wildlife trafficker, explained to everyone how he's helping the organized crime group to launder money in that country. And then a third person arrived, and he's a government official. He works at the local, in the country, the international airport. And his role is basically to facilitate the smuggling of in and out the country of everything, including people. So big inhuman smuggling. So this is what the top of environmental crime looks like. And if you miss this level, you are blind. You are missing the most important part of the problem, the most important part of the supply chain, and most of all, you are missing the real targets. And here is very important, especially for the work you're doing in the next 24 hours, to keep in mind who are the real targets and who are not. So what does tell us this? What I'm talking about? I'm talking about a thing called convergence. So with convergence, basically transnational criminal networks and groups and organized groups, like wildlife traffickers, of course, which includes everything, illegal fishing, illegal logging, at times, more often than not, share convergence points, places and businesses and people to launder and convert illicit profits into legitimate funds, legitimate money. In many parts of the world, the various criminal groups operate in the same space, like in this case. And to varying degrees, those groups overlap and even reinforce each other because they help each other. For example, mixing from a business point of view, of course, mixing human trafficking and smuggling with illicit minerals trade and wildlife trafficking and drugs. So all these groups take advantage of the same transportation routes. Of course, it makes sense. They know exactly who to bribe, where to go at the seaport or an airport. And so their supply chains sometimes overlap. And there is a growing interrelation between environmental crime and other serious crimes. And this shows that, let's say, traditional lines of separation are no longer appropriate for understanding what we're dealing with and the issue. And what I'm about to say now is probably the most important thing I'm going to say today. There are a lot of issues around the world that we, and by we I mean NGOs, governmental agencies, and media, and donors, and university, and the public opinion, we keep calling environmental issues or environmental conservation issues that in reality are criminal issues. And this is very important to understand. There are criminal issues, of course, with the environmental and conservation implication, but first of all are criminal issues. And they require a whole different approach, different mindset, different skills, and different professionals. So, and I'm not just talking about the Vaquita issue, I'm talking about elephant and rhino poaching and trafficking, for example, or illegal logging, or the trafficking of illegal timber, and so on. So this is a very important thing that you should keep in mind. Three more things to keep in mind for this hackathon. This is not just about the Vaquita. What you're about to do is not just about the Vaquita. The use of gill nets in the Sea of Cortez, the gill nets required to catch the totoaba fish, are killing the entire marine life of the Sea of Cortez. And I saw it with my eyes. Sharks and turtles and all kind of fish and marine birds and even whales. So those illegal nets created sort of killing fields that are killing everything. And the Vaquita, it's the symbol for this war. But stop and think, what will happen to this place if the Vaquita will go extinct? Okay, no wonder poachers and traffickers hate the Vaquita, and try to think why. The second fact, this is not just wildlife crime. We just learned what convergence is. So the story is about dangerous group of people, transnational organized crime, corrupt government officials, also legal businesses, making money from totoaba trafficking, reinvesting this money in other crimes like human smuggling, laundering money for organized crime, bribing public officials, and so on, all the way along the supply chain, all the way to China. So it's not just about wildlife crime, what you're also about to do. And finally, this story of the Vaquita is very, very similar to many other wildlife crime stories that we are seeing around the world. Elephant poaching, ivory trafficking, rhino poaching and rhino horn trafficking, trafficking of pangolin, and jaguar poaching and trafficking, which is another big project of ours in Latin America. They all, the same way of working, the same, very similar trafficking networks, very often in contact with each other, identical modus operandi, same convergence about the crime, same communities involved. So this is what you're about to do in the next 24 hours. It hopefully will help maybe other issues as well. So let's start talking about the Vaquita, rarest marine mammal in the world. So we have a huge responsibility. It's It's the smallest and most endangered porpoise in the world, nearly extinct due to, as you know by now, I think, China's demand for the swim bladder of the totoaba, this giant Mexican fish, and the vaquita is the bycatch, because of the use of these illegal gill nets. CITES Appendix 1, if it goes extinct, it's a big deal. As far as I know, I don't think I'm mistaken. It will be the first Appendix 1 species going extinct in a long time, if not ever. So it's a big deal also for CITES and the international community. The vaquitas live in a very small area. It's less than 1,600 square miles area. I'm from Los Angeles. I live in Los Angeles, so less than 1/4 of the size of the metropolitan Los Angeles. And the vaquita refuge, it's even smaller. And yet we were not able to protect this animal in such a small place. It's not like protecting elephants across Africa. We are talking about a very small area, which is 5-6 hours drive from Los Angeles. This is, for this reason and many others, an epic failure of conservation. I think it will go down in history as an epic failure of conservation. The governments of Mexico, the government of the United States, and various NGOs in 10 years spent more than $100 million to save the vaquita. I don't think elephants and rhinos combined have $100 million. And this is the result. The vaquitas went from almost 600 individuals in 97 to nobody knows now. We think they are around maybe 10 on average, maybe less. We don't know how many females and males. We do see every year new vaquitas, calves. So it gives hope. They did a DNA test to these animals, and it shows that they are, from a genetic point of view, are still healthy. They can bounce back from very few individuals, even from a couple, if it's possible. So you just have to let them, let them leave with no disturbances. The population of the vaquita have been decreasing, since the 40s, when they start, unfortunately, using the gill nets. But they were still okay. They were still surviving. They were still, fighting back. Between the 97 and 2008, the decrease was about 8% per year, and then from 2011 was with the demand from China for totoaba swim bladders, so the use of more and more gill nets, the population crashed, and the rate of decline was about 40% every year. So the illegal supply chain. So I will try to, in a very concise way, to give you an idea of what is the illegal supply chain, because it just to keep, it's useful for you for the work that you're about to do. So how you go from, the picture at the bottom, it's my team on the, we were checking for landing sites on the beaches around the Sea of Cortez, so landing sites of the illegal fishing vessel when they come back with the totoaba. So how do you go from here all the way to there? The picture above, it was taken in Guangzhou. Our undercover team was collecting intelligence for who sells totoaba and how and what is the price and everything. So the supply chain. So it all starts here in Baja California. Baja California is a beautiful place. In fact, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life, but it's also a very tricky place. Is Mexico's most crime-ridden state, and we're talking already about Mexico, so it gives you an idea of the level of crime in Baja California, and is the most crime-ridden, especially in terms of murders, crime against women, and auto theft. The U.S. State Department has labeled the city of Tijuana, that, by the way, was one of our main operational scenarios, as a critical threat location for crime directed at or affecting official U.S. government interest. So it's a big deal. And as you probably know, there are various narco trafficking cartels. There is that fight for the control of Baja California. There is the Sinaloa cartel, the Jalisco Nueva Generación cartel, and what is left of the Tijuana cartel. So this is the beginning of the Totoaba supply chain. And in this beautiful sea, this is where the vaquita lives. But the vaquita is a very shy animal. It swims away from man. That's why there are very few pictures of the vaquita and no picture of the vaquita swimming under the water. And this gentleman, so the illegal fishermen are usually run by fishing cooperatives and of course they are just the very beginning of the supply chain. They are the guys who during the night, using these very fast boats called panga, they put the nets in the water. Usually they do it in the night, but sometimes they do it also in the day because they don't really care about law enforcement. And then in the night they pick them up, and this is, what you see here is a lot of totoaba from gill nets. And this is the beginning of the supply chain. They usually eviscerate the fish at sea because, of course, they don't want to go back. So it makes more complicated if you have the whole fish. They keep only the swim bladder, and the swim bladder is taken to land. And this is a picture from a seizure that has been, in Mexico. This is how it looks like when it's still fresh. And on the right, you see them packed, ready for to be smuggled through the first part of the supply chain, which is from the sea to the main cities of Tijuana, Mexicali, or even Mexico City, where the swim bladder is handed over to Chinese traffickers who are in charge not only of the smuggling part but also of the drying part. So they have to be dried in order to be to be shipped. This is a statue, I mean, it's an installation that I took this picture in Mexico, but this is what it looks like underwater. So this is how the vaquita dies. It drowns. It cannot breathe. They get stuck, and it gets stuck together with many other animals. And this is a dead vaquita. This is a picture we got from actually from a fisherman. Of course, when the vaquita get caught, they just dispose the body, of course, because they don't want to be, the fishermen, they don't want to be found with the vaquita. But you see clearly on the body of the vaquita the signs of the nets that he got stuck underwater. And this is an example of the other casualty. As I said, it's not just about the vaquita, it's about turtles, it's about manta rays, it's about birds. You don't see them here in the picture, but we found a lot of marine birds. And especially during high season of totoaba poaching, if you walk around the Sea of Cortez, you just see carcasses of totoaba like this one after the other one. Then from Mexico, from Mexico, you have the beginning of the international part of the supply chain. So the totoaba is smuggled from Mexico to China using various intermediate destinations. Why various intermediate destinations? Because on the Chinese side, the Chinese authorities, especially customs, they got a little bit more aware and assertive. So now any cargo or even person coming directly from Mexico into China, very often it get checked. So the smugglers in Mexico use different proxy countries to go to smuggle the totoaba all the way to China, and especially southern China. So they go through. There were seizures in Japan, in Korea, in Hong Kong, of course, in Vietnam, and we heard of totoaba going from Mexico to Venezuela, and then Venezuela to Asia, and United States are becoming more and more important. I mean, they were already important, but they become even more important. So the United States are now one of the most important proxy countries. So they use the United States to smuggle the totoaba to Asia. the last two big seizures went through Los Angeles airport. And a few traffickers were telling us actually recently that the United States is becoming also a market. So because there is a very big Chinese Asian community in the United States, and they buy totoaba. It gets to, in this case, is Hong Kong. It gets to Hong Kong, and once it's Hong Kong or southern China, it disappears. It be like in the black hole, and then you, if you are lucky, like in this case, this is a seizure in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong authorities allow me to inspect this seizure. Was two trolleys, I think more than $1 million of totoaba in these two trolleys. It will be interesting to notice that the mules were two waiters, two Chinese waiters. You know, they work in Mexico as a waiter. They've been used as mules, and unfortunately they were handed over a very light sentence. If I remember well, for 10 or 14 weeks of jails. And interesting enough, despite being very poor people and just waiters, one of the most important legal law firm in Hong Kong actually took care of them. And it tells you something, right? These are not totoaba. This is other kind of fish maw, but this is the kind of place where you go if you want to find totoaba in the back office, of course, because it's illegal in China. But in order to understand the trafficking and the consumption of totoaba fish maw, you have to understand the fact that in China, they are crazy for fish maw in general. They just through Hong Kong, thousands of tons of fish maws are imported from all over the world every year. And every fish maw has a certain property according to the traditional Chinese medicine. In this case, totoaba, they use it for your blood, for pregnant women. But we're talking about, and you know, we got from the Hong Kong Trade and Commerce Department some statistic, and at least 2 years ago, the first country to export fish maw to Hong Kong was Uganda. And Uganda, of course, as you know, they don't even have a sea in Uganda. They have the Lake Victoria. So just to tell you, it's not just totoaba, it's about fish maw in general. So I hope I gave you a quick but precise explanation of the supply chain that I hope you will use it during this hackathon. And now just a few words about us. Earth League International, I established in 2013. We don't have any official office around the world because we do intelligence collections. So any office or official presence would be a liability. Our mission is to fight environmental crime and to support conservation projects through intelligence gathering, analysis, and a collaboration with government agency. At the moment, we share confidential data with at least 12, 15 law enforcement agencies around the world, especially here in the United States. We are an environmental organization, but our team background is a bit unusual for an environmental organization. The most important team members are former FBI, former CIA, crime analyst, cyber expert, geospatial intelligence expert like Odin Serrano. And then we have a great team of multinational undercover operatives that do a very unique part of our job, which is the undercover operation. Professional intelligence is, in my opinion, one of the most effective tools to fight environmental crime. Is not the most effective. And if you look at other global threats like terrorism, like narco trafficking, like transnational organized crime, intelligence is at the center of the strategy to fight back. You cannot dream to fight terrorism without having intelligence at the center of your strategy. And yet, in the fight against environmental crime, there's almost no intelligence. Government, donors, media, and the public are all of them overly focused mostly on the two ends of the supply chain, ground zero, so poaching and anti-poaching activities, or awareness campaigns are two very important, of course, activities, but they do not address the problem with these. Anti-poaching basically just buys time, very important, but it doesn't address the problem. Awareness campaign takes forever, and so far they failed. But both activities are easy to explain to the public, easy to fundraise, and so this is why most people focus on that. Alien intelligence and analysis activities are basically divided in 4 major sort of clusters of activities. We have human intelligence and undercover operation, which is what our main or our most important activity. We do cyber intelligence, we do geospatial intelligence in collaboration with Odin Serrano. And of course, there is the part of analysis, reporting, and dissemination, which is also very important. So intelligence-led approach is needed to integrate the more traditional reactive conservation model that we have now. We react to things. We seize container after already something happened. We run after poachers in the, I don't know, in Kruger National Park, not knowing that big traffickers don't care what happened to poachers. You can jail or kill 10 or 100 or thousands of them. They just don't care. Intelligence means having assets on the ground that manage to manage networks of sources and infiltrating trafficking organization. Very important. Intelligence is about working 24/7, 360 degrees. It should never stop, like you do, for example, against terrorism. Imagine to fight terrorism only from March to October, and that's it, or just by project. And it's an evidence-based work, of course. So it's about the acquisition of everything we can put our hands on, including about legal things, because intelligence is not just about crime. Intelligence in general decreases uncertainty. It's about knowing better your adversary and assessing the situation. But we do get all kind of stuff: names, photos, video, ID document, geospatial data, bank account, and so on, that we then share with law enforcement and with the public when it's possible. Analysis, of course, it's a very important part of our work, because all the information coming from the field is then analyzed by our crime analysts. They also use different softwares to combine the information coming from the field with information existing only on the net, on the deep web or open sources. We produce what we call confidential intelligence brief, CIB, that we share with law enforcement. We do a lot of, now thanks to Odin Serrano, a lot of geospatial intelligence work that is basically research and analysis on the convergence of various illicit networks and their interactions. It's about the aggregation of data collection, data-driven algorithms, and risk modeling and real-time alerts. This is an example of the way we work around the world. So for example, ALE operations in Latin America, if I have to explain you what we do, so we currently work in 7 countries, so Mexico, Bolivia, plus additional 5 that I prefer not to share here. In about 3-4 years, we identified already 16 different trafficking networks, and we have engaged over 150 persons of interest involved various degrees in different kind of environmental crime and wildlife trafficking. We produce, part of our job is to understand and to study the supply chain and to produce crime maps like this one to help us and others, including law enforcement, to better understand who is involved. This is just an example of rhino horn trafficking. It started in Thailand and Vietnam from one single person, and then look what it produced in the course of, I think, a year and a half, different countries, different people, different networks, and different companies, and so on. For the Vaquita, we launched Operation Fake Gold, and this is an example of the crime maps that we produced. This in particular is the crime map of the Chinese nationals in Mexico involved in the trafficking of totoaba, which is the Chinese community in Mexico. Chinese traffickers in Mexico are by far the most important link of the supply chain. That we have similar crime maps for Chinese traders in China, and we have a similar map of the Mexican side of the story. So the fishing cooperatives, the head of the poacher syndicates, and then Mexican traffickers. But the Chinese are the most important part. And this is the last slide. It's not just bad news. And sometimes law enforcement, they do their job. And this is a very recent development. This November, in the past weeks, Mexican authorities have arrested several totoaba poachers and traffickers under organized crime charges against the environment, which is the first time that the charges of this nature have been applied in Mexico. these arrests are directly linked to our work and the information that we have been sharing with the Mexican authorities for almost 3 years. I think of the 6 main people arrested, at least 4 of them were already in our confidential brief 2 years ago. So this is a beginning. Unfortunately, Mexican authorities stopped short of arresting or doing anything on the Chinese side that we just mentioned. And this is a problem that we see around the world. It's not that all the Chinese are involved. I don't want to say that, but Chinese traffickers are very important players, and usually around the world, not just in Mexico, local law enforcement authorities have issues in going after these people because they are very connected because of various reasons. But we are taking care also of these people let's say in collaboration with other governments. And with that, I finish. I hope I didn't take too much time. I would like to thank you for your work, especially on behalf of the Vaquita and the Marine Life of the Sea of Cortez. And thank you for your work. And thank you. Bye-bye.